In a poignant ceremony at the White House, President Donald Trump offered a profound homage to the late Charlie Kirk on what would have been his 32nd birthday. Surrounded by family, friends, and conservative figures, Trump posthumously conferred the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Charlie, presenting it to his mourning wife, Erika Kirk, who has now taken the helm of Turning Point USA. As Erika delivered her own tear-filled speech, the nation watched with intense feeling. The powerful occasion unified America, serving as a testament to legacy, faith, and freedom. The sun dawned softly over Washington, D.C. on October 14, 2025. Yet a somber quietness enveloped the White House. This was no ordinary day, it was the 32nd birthday of Charlie Kirk, a young conservative champion whose voice had been extinguished just weeks prior at Utah Valley University. The country was still in mourning. Inside the White House, President Donald J. Trump, serving as both the 45th and 47th President of the United States, paced the corridors slowly. For a moment, his signature booming confidence was replaced by something more delicate, sorrow. He had cut short his Middle East trip, where he was forging landmark peace agreements, just to be present. "This must happen today," Trump murmured to an aide. "Nothing is more important." Outside in the Rose Garden, rows of chairs were arranged as American flags fluttered in the brisk autumn air. Family, friends, and conservative leaders took their places quietly, their eyes moist with tears. They were not merely anticipating a ceremony, they were seeking a sense of closure. America was watching, with millions tuning in live. While the exact words to be spoken were unknown, everyone understood one thing: this day would be etched in history as a tribute of love and grief that would never be forgotten. In the very first row of the Rose Garden, an empty chair was positioned, adorned with a single folded flag and a framed portrait of Charlie Kirk. His smile, immortalized in the photograph, seemed to watch over the assembly as if he were still present. The sight itself drew audible gasps from those in attendance. Mothers held their children closer, and older men bowed their heads in quiet reflection. President Trump, waiting backstage, gazed at that empty chair for a moment. He shut his eyes, almost able to hear Charlie's voice, fiery, passionate, and fearless. The memory seized him. As the Marine Band gently played "God Bless America," Erika Kirk made her entrance with her two children. Her young daughter clutched a small stuffed toy to her chest, the type she used to give her father on his birthdays. The audience rose to their feet in a gesture of respect. Tears welled in Erika's eyes, but she kept her head held high. She was walking not just as a widow, but as a leader, stepping into the role her husband had left vacant. Upon sitting beside the empty chair, she reached over and gently touched the framed picture. "Happy birthday, Charlie," she whispered. The microphones didn't catch the sound, but the crowd saw her lips form the words, and they wept. The moment finally arrived. President Trump stepped onto the stage, the burden of sorrow visible on his face. The audience erupted into applause. But it wasn't the typical cheer of a rally. This was a softer, more reverent standing ovation of respect and mourning. Trump raised his hand slightly to quiet the crowd, his eyes unusually red, betraying the tears he had struggled to contain. He started his speech slowly, his voice deep and solemn. October 14, 2025. "This should have been a birthday party," he said. "Instead, we are gathered to honor the life of my dear friend, Charlie Kirk." The crowd fell silent. Cameras focused in as Trump's hands shook almost imperceptibly while he grasped the podium. He paused, looking straight at Erika and her children. Charlie was assassinated in the prime of his life for speaking the truth, for living his faith, and for relentlessly fighting for America. He went on. "And that is why today, as your president, I posthumously award Charlie Kirk our nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom." The words landed with immense force. The audience gasped, many sobbing openly. Even seasoned political figures were seen wiping their eyes. Trump's voice wavered slightly, but he pressed on, determined to honor his fallen comrade. A Marine officer came forward, holding a polished wooden box. Inside lay the Presidential Medal of Freedom, shining under the rose garden sun. The ribbon was a deep blue, the medal itself gleaming with a golden luster. For a brief moment, the crowd seemed to hold its collective breath. President Trump carefully unlatched the case. He looked at the medal with solemn reverence and then turned to Erika Kirk. "This is not just a medal," Trump said, his voice trembling. "This is America's eternal promise to Charlie that his fight, his faith, and his legacy will never be forgotten." The audience was on its feet once more, applauding through their tears. Erika stood, her young daughter still holding her hand tightly. Trump descended from the podium, holding the medal in both hands. He gently placed it into Erika's arms. Her shoulders trembled, but she remained upright. She pressed the medal to her chest, murmuring something only she and God could hear. The camera zoomed in, capturing her tears glistening in the sunlight. The nation was watching. Millions of homes, schools, and churches across America grew quiet before their screens. In that instant, it felt as though time had frozen. The crowd quieted as Erika Kirk approached the podium. She set the medal's case on the stand, her trembling fingers brushing over it as if it were Charlie himself. A hush more profound than silence fell over the rose garden. Even the flags, which had been fluttering, seemed to still. She cleared her throat, struggling against tears. Her voice broke as she began. "Charlie should be here today. He should be blowing out candles, eating cupcakes with our daughter, and laughing at our son's silly faces. But instead, I stand here because a man who spoke truth was taken too soon." Her daughter tugged at her dress, whispering, "Mommy, tell Daddy I love him." Erika's tears finally fell. She composed herself and went on. "Our little girl said this morning, 'Happy birthday, Daddy. I want to give you a stuffed animal, and I want you to eat a cupcake with ice cream.' That is the love of a child, pure, innocent, and untouched by hate." The audience was overcome. Senators, governors, pastors, and college leaders wept openly. Trump lowered his head, his lips pressed together as if to contain his own emotional storm. This was no ordinary address, it was a widow's plea for love, legacy, and faith. As Erika's words trailed off, the ensuing silence was overwhelming. Cameras flashed, but no one stirred. The weight of sorrow was so palpable that some in the audience held their breath. President Trump slowly rose from his seat and walked toward Erika. He did not hurry, each step seemed deliberate, burdened with significance. When he reached her, he placed his hand gently on her shoulder. The gesture was not political or scripted, it was human, one grieving soul comforting another. "Erika," Trump said softly, though the microphones caught his words, "Charlie's spirit is here, and he is proud of you. Proud of your strength, proud of your family, and proud of America." Erika lowered her head, covering her face with her hand as tears streamed down. Trump pulled her into a brief hug. The crowd reacted again, not with applause this time, but with a wave of sniffles and quiet sobs. Even jaded reporters, typically stoic, wiped their eyes. It was impossible not to be moved. America was united in its pain, but also in its pride. In that moment, the Rose Garden was no longer just a stage, it was a sanctuary filled with sorrow, love, and history being written. President Trump went back to the podium after consoling Erika. He placed both hands on the lectern, paused, and let his eyes scan the crowd. The audience leaned in, sensing he was about to speak from the heart. "I met Charlie back in 2016. Trump began, his voice slow but firm. He was just 22 years old. No fancy degrees, no special privileges, just fire in his heart. He started from his parents' basement, and he built Turning Point USA into something bigger than anyone imagined. His words resonated in the air. Even those familiar with the story felt it differently now. He was fearless, Trump continued. He stood up to the woke professors, against the mobs that wanted to silence him. And he never once backed down. He gave a voice to millions of young Americans who believed in God, country, and freedom. Without Charlie Kirk, my friends, I'm not sure if I'd be standing here as your president again today. The crowd erupted in applause, tears streaming down faces as Trump's voice faltered. Charlie wasn't just a leader, he was my brother in arms. The Rose Garden filled with a mix of grief and gratitude. The ceremony became heavier as Trump confronted the painful truth. The audience steeled themselves. September 10, 2025, Trump said slowly. Utah Valley University. 5,000 students. All cheering. All inspired. And then, the unthinkable happened. His voice cracked. The crowd was silent. A hateful man, fueled by lies and rage, took Charlie's life in the prime of his youth. Just 31 years old. He was assassinated for speaking truth, for living faith, for defending this nation. Some gasped, while others bowed their heads in prayer. Erika held her children tightly, her lips trembling as tears fell. Trump squared his shoulders, his tone growing stronger again. But let me tell you something. They thought they silenced Charlie. They didn't. They made him eternal. They made his message louder than ever before. The crowd roared with applause. Rising to their feet, some raised their hands in prayer, others clapped until their palms were red. Trump lowered his voice again. Softer now. I called Erika that night. I promised her Charlie's legacy would never die. And I am keeping that promise today. Every word pierced the heart. This was no longer just politics, it was about family, faith, and sacrifice. Just as the tension peaked, Erika's daughter tugged on her mother's hand again. The little girl's innocent voice cut through the silence. Mommy, she said softly. But the microphones picked it up. Can Daddy have his birthday cake now? The audience broke. Tears flowed freely. Reporters lowered their cameras for a moment. Wiping their eyes, Erika knelt beside her daughter and whispered, Sweetheart, Daddy's celebrating in heaven. Then she stood, her voice trembling as she shared with the crowd. This morning, before we came here, she told me, Happy birthday, Daddy. I want to give you a stuffed animal. I want you to eat a cupcake with ice cream. And I want you to go have a birthday surprise. I love you. The Rose Garden fell apart. Men who hadn't cried in years broke down openly. Women sobbed into their handkerchiefs. Trump himself turned away for a second, his hand covering his face. When he faced the crowd again, his eyes were wet. Out of the mouth of babes, he said softly, Charlie's legacy lives on not only in his work but in his children's love. The moment was both unbearable and unforgettable. As the ceremony continued, aides quietly placed a leather-bound folder on the podium. Everyone recognized it. The gold-embossed seal of the United States gleamed in the sun. President Trump straightened his tie, then looked out at the audience. This medal is not the end, he said firmly. Charlie's life was bigger than an award. It was a movement. And that is why today, I am signing a proclamation to forever remember October 14th as the National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk. The crowd gasped, then clapped thunderously. Erika's hands flew to her mouth. Her daughter looked up with innocence, not comprehending the gravity of what had just happened. Trump picked up a pen, paused for a long second, and then pressed his signature across the document. Cameras clicked wildly. The sound of applause grew louder, rolling through the Rose Garden like a storm. Every year on this day, Trump declared, raising the signed paper, America will honor Charlie's faith, his fight, and his freedom. The crowd rose to their feet once more, some holding their hands to their hearts, others lifting small American flags. For the first time in weeks, the nation felt united in pride. Erika Kirk, still clutching the medal, returned to the podium after the proclamation. The crowd hushed again, eager to hear her voice. Her tears had not dried, but her spirit shone with resilience. Charlie never wanted fame. She began softly. He wanted freedom, for young people, for families, for this nation. He wanted every child to grow up believing that America is worth fighting for. Her voice quavered as she glanced at her children in the front row. To my daughter and son, your daddy's courage was bigger than fear. And his love for you was bigger than hate. She looked back at the crowd, gathering strength. Today, as I receive this medal of freedom on his behalf, I promise you, I will carry his torch. Turning Point USA will live on. His fight will not end with his death, it will only grow stronger. The Rose Garden erupted in cheers, though many were still crying. The sight of a young widow standing tall in her grief, yet unbroken, was almost too much to bear. Even President Trump clapped, his eyes fixed on her with admiration. "What a woman," he whispered into the microphone, shaking his head. By now, the Rose Garden was more than a ceremony, it was a living testament to faith, love, and sacrifice. Reporters, politicians, students, and pastors all sat together, wiping their eyes. The barriers of politics and status had melted away under the weight of shared grief. Trump leaned forward again, his voice deep, steady, and personal. "Let me tell you, folks, this is one of the most beautiful, heartbreaking days of my presidency. I've had a lot of powerful days, believe me, but nothing compares to this. Nothing." He paused, his hand resting on the podium as the crowd listened intently. "We cried today, not because we are weak, but because we love Charlie, because we know what he stood for, and because we miss him." At that moment, the Marine Band played softly in the background, their notes seeming to tremble like the people listening. Some members of the audience linked hands, others bowed their heads in prayer. The cameras panned over Erika's daughter, still holding her stuffed animal. The innocence of her tiny face against the backdrop of such sorrow brought millions watching at home to uncontrollable tears. America was not just mourning, it was healing together. The president took a deep breath, gripping the podium again. The audience leaned forward, sensing that what he was about to share came from deep within his heart. "I'll tell you something about Charlie," Trump began. "He wasn't just a fighter for America, he was also a friend to me. A real friend. Not because of politics. Not because of power. But because he believed in me when many didn't." He paused, his voice growing softer. "Back in 2016, when I first met him, he was this young guy with more energy than anyone I'd ever seen. He told me, 'Mr. Trump, the youth of America are with you. They want freedom. They want truth.' And he proved it." The crowd nodded, remembering Charlie's rallies filled with college students chanting USA, USA. Trump's eyes turned glassy. "Charlie gave me something priceless. He gave me hope for America's future. He showed me that young people still believe." The Rose Garden echoed with applause mixed with sobs. Erika looked down at the medal in her lap, whispering, "That's exactly who he was." At that moment, the entire audience could feel Charlie's presence, alive in memory and spirit. As the clapping subsided, a pastor from the front row quietly stood. Without waiting for permission, he raised his hand and asked, "Mr. President, may I pray?" Trump nodded firmly. "Please do." The pastor stepped to the center, bowed his head, and began, "Lord, we thank you for the life of Charlie Kirk, for his courage, his faith, and his family. We pray for Erika and her children. Give them strength. Give America strength. Let us honor Charlie not just with words, but with our lives." The prayer was simple but powerful. People in the crowd wept openly, some lifting their hands in agreement. Erika closed her eyes, clutching her daughter close. The little girl rested her head on her mother's shoulder, the stuffed animal still pressed against her chest. Trump lowered his head as well, standing silently in respect. For a few minutes, the Rose Garden was no longer political, it was sacred ground. When the pastor finished, the crowd whispered Amen. In unison. The sound was soft, yet it carried with incredible force. The nation watching on television felt the weight of the moment. For many, it was the first time they had cried in years. After the prayer, there was no rush to move on. The crowd remained seated, quietly absorbing the moment. Even the autumn wind seemed to pause, brushing gently against the flags. Trump looked across the rows of guests, governors, senators, college students, everyday Americans. Not one person remained untouched. Some were wiping tears, others staring into the distance, reflecting on their own lives. He stepped back to the microphone. You see this, folks? This is what Charlie did. He brought people together. Different backgrounds, different stories, but united by love of country and love of God. That was Charlie's America. The words struck deeply. Erika turned toward the empty chair where Charlie's photograph rested. She reached out once more and touched the frame. The cameras caught her lips forming silent words, "We love you." The silence that followed was louder than applause. Across the nation, viewers felt it too. Families in living rooms, students in dorms, the elderly in nursing homes, all watching, all crying. It was no longer just a ceremony, it was a nation grieving together. Held in the stillness of one unforgettable afternoon, Trump leaned in closer to the microphone. His voice steady but rich with emotion. Charlie didn't just create a movement, he gave America's young people a reason to believe again. On campuses where they were mocked for loving this country, Charlie stood tall and said, "You are not alone. Stand proud. Stand for America." The crowd nodded. Many young faces in the audience weeping, students who had once followed Charlie's leadership. They weren't just remembering a man, they were remembering the courage he had instilled in their own hearts. Trump raised his hand slightly. "I've seen it myself. Thousands of college kids chanting USA. Louder than the fake news ever expected. That's Charlie's army. That's his gift to America. And today, that army is stronger than ever." Erika's eyes glistened. She whispered to her son, bouncing on her lap, "That's your daddy's legacy." The Marine Band played a soft note, almost like a heartbeat, carrying the weight of the moment. Trump closed his eyes briefly, then said, "Without Charlie Kirk, America's future would have been dimmer. But because of him, our light shines brighter than ever." The applause shook the Rose Garden. When the applause faded, Erika stood once more, holding the medal against her chest. Her hands trembled, but her voice carried with remarkable strength. "Charlie gave everything he had," she began, pausing to catch her breath. "And now, it is up to me, to us, to continue what he started. I accept this honor not just as his wife, but as the leader of Turning Point, and as a mother raising his children." She looked out over the crowd, her gaze steady. "I promise you all this, Charlie's mission will not end here. I will keep his fight alive. I will protect his legacy with every breath I take. And I will make sure our children grow up knowing their daddy was a hero." Her words struck like thunder in the hearts of everyone present. A standing ovation filled the Rose Garden again. But this time it was mixed with sobs. Trump nodded proudly, whispering to those seated behind him, "That's strength. That's grace." For a moment, Erika's courage eclipsed the grief. The nation was no longer just mourning Charlie, it was rallying behind the future his wife and children would carry forward. The ceremony had reached a point where words seemed inadequate. Yet the silence spoke volumes. Politicians, activists, pastors, and families all stood side by side, united in grief and gratitude. President Trump spread his hands wide over the crowd. "Look around, folks. This is what America is meant to be. Not divided by hate, but united in love. Charlie showed us that." The people clapped. But this time slowly. almost reverently. It wasn't political applause, it was human acknowledgement. Even reporters, often critical, lowered their pens and cameras for a moment. They had come expecting a ceremony; instead, they were caught in history's grip. In homes across America, families watching on television leaned closer. Some crying, some holding hands. Many whispered prayers of their own. Trump's voice deepened. We honor Charlie today. But let us also remember, America's greatness is built on people like him. People who refuse to be silenced. People who fight for faith, family, and freedom. The crowd erupted one last time. Standing shoulder to shoulder. Cheering through tears. The Rose Garden wasn't just a place that afternoon, it was the beating heart of a united nation. Trump's voice grew heavier as he recalled the night of September 10th. When the tragedy first struck. I'll never forget the phone call, he said, lowering his gaze. The moment I heard Charlie had been shot. I picked up the phone and called Erika. She answered, her voice shaking. And all I could say was, Erika, I'm with you. I promise you. Charlie's legacy is safe with me. The audience sat frozen, listening to every word. Erika closed her eyes, remembering that painful moment. Tears fell freely down her cheeks. Trump clenched the podium. I told her, this country will never forget his sacrifice. I will not let them erase his name. Not now. Not ever. The Rose Garden was silent except for the muffled sobs from the crowd. The cameras captured Trump's face, raw and broken in a way the nation rarely saw. Erika's strength that night, Trump continued, gave me strength. She said, Mr. President, Charlie would want you to keep fighting. Don't stop. And I promised her I wouldn't. The crowd erupted in applause. But many wept as they stood. That phone call, replayed in Trump's words, became a moment etched into history. The ceremony took another emotional turn when Trump looked toward Charlie's young daughter, still clutching the stuffed animal. Let me tell you about this, Trump said softly, pointing toward her. This little girl gave me that stuffed animal earlier today. And she said, give this to Daddy for his birthday. The audience gasped, tears flowing freely. Erika held her daughter close, but the little girl looked proudly at Trump, unaware of the cameras capturing her innocence. Trump's voice cracked. I held it in my hands, and I thought of my own grandchildren. And I said to myself, this is why I fight. This is why Charlie fought. For children like her. For the families who deserve to live in freedom and peace. The camera zoomed in on the toy, now resting beside Charlie's framed photo on the empty chair. That simple gesture from a child spoke louder than any speech. The crowd couldn't hold back, even senior officials in sharp suits wiped tears from their faces. Trump added, almost in a whisper, Charlie's little girl gave us all a reminder today, love is stronger than hate. Even stronger than death. The Rose Garden broke into a standing ovation. By this point, the ceremony was more than an event, it had become a national moment. Across America, in living rooms, schools, and churches, people were glued to their screens. In Texas, a family held hands around their TV. In Ohio, students watching in a classroom broke into tears. In Florida, an elderly couple whispered prayers as the Marine Band played in the background. Back in the Rose Garden, Trump's voice carried the weight of the entire nation. America, I know you're watching this. And I know you're crying with us. But don't cry because we've lost Charlie. Cry because he gave us everything and inspired us to carry on. The audience broke again into applause. Erika wiped her eyes, whispering to her children, see? Daddy's dream is alive. For a few minutes, it didn't matter who was Republican, Democrat, or Independent. It didn't matter what state you were from or what your background was. For a nation so often divided, October 14th had become a rare day of unity. And at the center of it all stood Donald Trump. His voice softer than usual, reminding America that sometimes, Tears can build bridges stronger than words. Trump cleared his throat, his voice rising again with energy. Let me take you back to where it all started. Charlie Kirk wasn't born into politics, folks. He didn't come from some powerful family. He started in a basement, his parents' basement in Illinois. No money, no big sponsors, just fire in his heart and faith in God. He gestured broadly, the flags behind him catching the fall sunlight. At 22 years old, Charlie built Turning Point USA. By 24, he had chapters on more campuses than the Ivy Leagues combined. By 28, he was leading the youth of America in numbers we hadn't seen in decades. The audience nodded, some even chanting USA. Softly from the back rows, Trump smiled faintly. That's the kind of spirit America was built on. Not privilege, not connections, but grit, determination, and love of country. That's what Charlie taught our kids. Erika pressed the medal closer to her chest, tears falling again. But her chin was lifted proudly. She knew the president's words were true. Trump concluded, his tone lowering. Charlie proved one man's faith and courage can build an army. And let me tell you, his army is still marching. The podium shifted back to Erika once more. Her voice shook, but her words came with conviction. When Charlie and I married, she began, he told me, this isn't just about us, it's about building something for generations. He lived every day for that mission. Even at home, with our children. He was teaching them to love this country, to trust God, and to serve others. She paused, placing her hand gently on her daughter's head. Our little girl said to me this morning, Mommy, is Daddy still working for America in heaven? And I told her, yes. Daddy's work doesn't stop just because he's gone. The crowd gasped softly, touched to their core. A few audible cries rose from the back. Erika steadied herself. This medal isn't just for Charlie. It's for every young person who believes they can make a difference. For every family raising children in faith. For every voice that refuses to be silenced. The audience rose again in a wave of applause, cheering through their tears. Trump leaned toward his chief of staff and whispered, she's stronger than anyone realizes. America, watching live, felt that strength too. Erika had become not just a widow, but a leader. Trump stepped back to the podium one final time for the afternoon. His eyes swept over the rose garden, catching Erika, her children, and the hundreds of patriots gathered. Folks, let me say this. He began. Charlie Kirk gave his life speaking the truth. And as long as I am your president, his mission will not end. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. The crowd cheered loudly. But Trump raised his hand, calling for calm. His voice softened. I interrupted a trip overseas. One of the most important of my presidency. Because this was more important. Family. Faith. America, these things always come first. He paused, his gaze lingering on the stuffed animal resting on Charlie's chair. When that little girl handed me her gift for her daddy, I knew right then. This fight is bigger than politics. This is about love. About keeping our children safe. About protecting the country Charlie gave everything for. The audience fell into a reverent silence. Mark my words, Trump declared. His tone sharp again. America will never forget Charlie Kirk. His name will live forever in the story of this nation. And together, we will finish what he started. A hush fell over the rose garden as aides brought forward a small wooden desk draped in the American flag. Trump reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a black pen. The audience leaned forward, sensing the moment had arrived. Today, Trump announced, his voice slow and deliberate, I am signing this proclamation. October 14th will forever be known as the National Day of Remembrance for Charlie Kirk. The words hung in the air like thunder. He bent over the document, the pen scratching across the page. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing history in real time. When he lifted his signature for all to see, the audience erupted. Cheers, tears, and applause all blended together. Erika pressed her hand to her mouth. Overcome. Trump held up the paper. This is not just a date on the calendar. It is a promise, to Charlie's family, to America, and to every patriot who believes in truth and freedom. We will not forget him. Ever. The crowd rose to its feet, flags waving gently in the fall breeze. Across the nation, millions watching on TV whispered, Amen. The moment carried a wave of emotion so strong that even the most hardened faces in the audience softened. Senators wiped their eyes discreetly. Governors, once known for fiery debates, stood in silence with tears streaming. Students in the back rows wept openly, hugging each other. The Marine band struck a soft hymn, God Bless America, and voices began to hum along. The sound wasn't planned, it rose naturally from the crowd, filling the Rose Garden with a unity that felt almost sacred. Trump looked out, his jaw tight but his eyes wet. Look at this, folks. This is America. This is what Charlie did. He brought us together. Erika leaned down and kissed the top of her daughter's head. The little girl clutched the stuffed animal tighter, as though she knew the entire country was grieving with her. Even members of the press lowered their cameras, caught in the wave of human emotion. The president placed her hand over his heart. This is bigger than politics. This is love of country, love of family, love of freedom. And Charlie's life reminds us that these things are worth everything. The audience thundered in applause through their tears. By late afternoon, the Rose Garden was glowing in golden light. The flags shimmered. The air carried a crisp autumn chill. And yet the warmth among the crowd was undeniable. Trump raised his hands, addressing everyone one last time. Today, we did not just honor Charlie Kirk. We honored America itself, the spirit of courage, faith, and freedom. And I promise you this, his mission is not finished. It lives in every single one of us. The crowd stood in total silence, absorbing his words. Then, as if on cue, chants of USA, USA, broke out. The sound roared across the Rose Garden and beyond, captured live on every major network. Erika stood tall, the medal glinting against her chest, her children beside her. She whispered, Charlie, look at this. Your dream lives on. Trump nodded toward her, his voice soft but steady. Erika, your husband changed this nation. And because of him, because of your strength, America will never be the same. At that moment, differences faded. Families across the country watching on television felt part of something greater. It was no longer just a ceremony, it was the rebirth of unity, born out of grief, faith, and courage. As the ceremony drew toward its end, the Rose Garden fell into a sacred silence. The autumn sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. American flags fluttered softly in the breeze, as if nature itself was saluting Charlie Kirk. Trump stood motionless for a moment, allowing the silence to linger. You can feel it, can't you? He said gently, his voice thick with emotion. Charlie is here with us. His spirit is in this garden. It is in this crowd. It is in every young person who refuses to give up on America. The crowd did not move. Even the children were quiet, watching Erika clutch the medal against her chest. Her daughter tugged on her dress, whispering, Mommy, Daddy can hear us, right? Erika nodded, tears streaming, whispering back, yes, baby. Daddy hears everything. A soldier in uniform raised his hand in a salute, and soon dozens more followed. The crowd almost instinctively placed their hands over their hearts. For a few minutes, no words were needed. Only silence, tears, and love filled the air. It was the kind of silence that spoke louder than speeches. Echoing across the nation, Trump returned to the podium, his face serious but glowing with conviction. Today, we cried together. We prayed together. We remembered together. But most importantly, we stood together as Americans. The audience broke into applause. But Trump lifted his hand once more. I want every person watching at home to know this: Charlie Kirk was more than an activist. He was more than a fighter. He was a husband, a father, a friend, and a patriot who gave his all. And his dream will never die. He paused, his voice softening. I promise Erika. I promise those two beautiful children. And I promise this country, I will carry his fight forward. Charlie's work is America's work. And as long as I breathe, I will protect that legacy. The crowd roared in approval. Their chants of USA, USA, rolling like thunder. Cameras zoomed in on Erika as she lifted her daughter into her arms, whispering prayers through her tears. Trump raised his fist, then placed it over his heart. This is not the end. This is the beginning of something even greater. Charlie Kirk's name will live forever in American history. The Rose Garden erupted in one final standing ovation. As the ceremony closed, the Marine Band played softly. Their notes carrying across Washington, D.C. People lingered, unwilling to leave, as though walking away would break the fragile bond holding them all together. Trump stepped down from the podium and walked toward Erika. He embraced her firmly, then bent down to meet her children. He whispered something only they could hear. The little girl handed him the stuffed animal again. Trump kissed her forehead, his own eyes glistening. Reporters noted the moment. But for once, the cameras did not feel intrusive. This was not politics. This was family. This was America. As dusk settled over the Rose Garden, Trump turned back once more and raised his voice for the final time. God bless Charlie Kirk. God bless his family. And God bless the United States of America. The crowd answered in unison. Amen. Across the nation, millions cried. Families watching on their TVs hugged tighter. Churches held vigils. Social media overflowed with tributes. The legacy of Charlie Kirk had been sealed forever. Friends, if this story moved you, don't just be a spectator. Become part of this community. Hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel. Share your reflections in the comments. And join our membership to access exclusive features. Let's honor Charlie's legacy together. Your voice is important. Your support is important. Let's carry this mission forward, united, faithful, and unbreakable.